вроде бы трансляция уже идет, если я не ошибаюсь. And I'm going to switch to English now. So, can somebody let me know if you can hear me in the YouTube chat or in the YouTube comments? Oh yeah, okay. I think you can hear me. Perfect. So, basically, yeah. Hello everyone. My name is Ruslan Saleev, and I was a staff member at the CACTUS Forum in 2017 and in 2018. And today I'm even in the CACTUS t-shirt. Came prepared. So, basically... okay, Yulia, thank you. So basically today we're going to talk about art and law, and we're going to explore what are the boundaries of creativity. So basically we're going to see how art, state and law interact between each other, and how state and law consequently influence art in one way or another. We're going to look at the copyright issues, we're going to look at some performance arts, we're going to look at graffiti, Banksy. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to basically look at. Okay. Presentation. Can you see how I'm moving the slides? I hope yes. So basically today we're going to discuss, first I'm going to make a small intro. Then we're going to talk about graffiti and street art, and we're going to particularly look at Mexican muralism, Banksy and 5 Points case. Also, we're going to touch a little bit of performance art and Marina Bramovic. She is my favorite artist, and she has quite an interesting performance that is related to one very interesting legal issue that is related to the boundaries of creativity of the artist, and how can the artist expand the boundaries of their own creativity. And finally, we're going to look at the so-called Aktionskunst, the actionism art that was born in Vienna in the 20th century, and consequently the modern political performance art. And in particular, we're going to look at Crack Rodriguez, who is an artist from El Salvador. He has quite an interesting political performance that I'm going to discuss. Then we're going to look at the very famous case of Pussy Riot, and then Piotr Pawlenski. Probably you also know him for his quite controversial performances. And then we're going to also look at some of the examples of the Ukrainian political art as well. When I was doing the research about the topic, I was very pleased to see that also Ukraine has political art as well, and the institution of Ukrainian political art is present and is developing. So, let's start. As an introduction, when I was thinking what basically should I talk about during the webinar, I couldn't find a topic for quite a long time, and then I saw the news that on the 25th of May this year, actually, so very recently, in St. Petersburg, there was a wall painted next to Brodsky's house that is a museum now, and as you can see, the graffiti is very well done, but next day, literally, the ЖКХ services, which are some kind of a communal services that are how can you say it? How can you describe ЖКХ? ЖКХ services, the services that are kind of providing support, or like they're doing some kind of a cleaning on the street and everything. They painted the graffiti. They painted it, and as you can see the result on the screen, now it's non-existent. It's literally some kind of a white spot on the wall. And when I saw this, I was like, that's quite unfair towards the artist, and the work of art, graffiti, even though some people might say that it's illegal, is also destroyed now. So Oh, by the way, I wanted to do some kind of a disclaimer. I'm not trying to do some really, really comprehensive discussion about all the topics that I'm going to touch. This is some kind of an introduction to let you know what is happening in the art world currently and what happened in the past and how it relates to art. If you want to know it a little bit deeper, you can contact me. I can try to explain it. But today it's some kind of an introduction to the general topic. And also you can find all the sources that I used and all the references to the pictures and everything at the end of the presentation. Probably it can be also shared with you later. So yeah, Brodsky's Graffiti was painted, and this made me think about how art can be and should be protected, or how particular types of art are also prohibited maybe, or they are erased by the state, they are somehow persecuted by the state. Also, if you want to ask some questions, write them in the chat. I will try to answer them later as soon as I see them. So let's look at the Mexican muralism first. Mexican muralism is quite an interesting example because this is actually some kind of a situation when state actually somehow procured art and ordered art and actually was rewarding the so-called graffiti. To what extent can you call Mexican muralism graffiti is also quite debatable, but let's say that this is some kind of graffiti works if you are oversimplifying it, and the state actually not only not prohibited this type of art but also ordered it to be done. So on the right you can see Jose Vasconcelos, and after the Mexican Revolution he was appointed as Secretary of Public Education, and basically he realized that Mexican people are really illiterate. They cannot literally read, they don't really know, there's not that much public education going on, and the also country is kind of devastated after the revolution, and they needed to bring up the people once again and bring up their spirit. So what he did was actually a very smart idea, as I think. He ordered the Los Tres Grandes, the three greatest muralists, Diego Rivera, José Clemente Orozco, y David Alfaro Siqueiros, to paint these murals all over Mexico, basically, Mexico City, in order for them to show to Mexican people their history, to teach them what was their past, to show them what is their present, and also to show them what kind of future do people have to try to go to, basically, what kind of future they're heading to. So yeah, this is an example when public or street art was actually ordered by the state, and the state was saying, yeah, okay, guys, you're good that you're doing this. But nowadays this is not the case, because basically graffiti is regarded as some kind of an illegal act, normally the act of vandalism. In many jurisdictions you can find them in the criminal codes or in the administrative codes. So now let's look at the examples when graffiti are not really procured by the state but actually prohibited by the state laws. And the first example that I want us to look at is Banksy. Probably everybody knows Banksy by now. He's a very famous graffiti artist, and his graffitis appear literally everywhere in the world. You never can predict when a new graffiti is going to appear. And graffitis, like Banksy's graffitis, are very well known and renowned. And even though graffiti normally is regarded as vandalism, his works of art, the graffitis, are very well valued in the art market, and also they're very well known in the world. So now I want to show you some theory, because it's really necessary for the understanding of the cases that I'm going to show you. Basically, the copyright, intellectual property of the artist. Copyright, and hence the protection of the artist's work, of the artist's creativity, is granted as soon as the idea becomes physical in one way or another. And this is the general principle. Ideas cannot be protected by copyright. If you have an idea and somebody steals it, basically it's not protected. You had to put an idea, your creative endeavor, somehow into a physical form. For example, for music, you're going to write some notes. For some projects, you're going to design some kind of schemes and tables and everything. For art, you put your creative idea into the physical world by painting a picture, by making a statue. And in the graffiti case, you actually put it in the physical form as well by painting the walls. So basically, copyright is granted to the graffiti as soon... Hi Ruslan, I miss your cool hair from 2018. Okay. Yeah, well, it changed a little bit. Sorry for the distraction. So basically, the protection to the graffiti is granted as soon as it's painted on the wall. And copyright has a double nature. First dimension of the copyright, it's economic rights. Economic rights are, for example, the rights of the image being used in commercial purposes, in some kind of, advertisements, movies, music videos, etc. And these rights can be passed. So basically, the artist can say, okay, this is my copyright, and I'm either passing it to you temporarily in order for you to use it for some period of time, or I can pass it to you eternally, infinitely. You can use my image, my artwork in a commercial purpose the way you want, for how long you want. And the second dimension of the copyright is actually moral rights, and they always stay with the author. What does this mean, basically? The moral rights comprise normally the three types of rights: rights of attribution, right to have the work published anonymously or pseudonymously, and right to integrity of the work. The most important for our discussion today is the right to integrity of the work. And this right means that the right to the artists have a right to prevent alteration, distortion, or mutilation of the work that is prejudicial to the author's honor or reputation. So basically, if somebody vandalizes your work or changes it in a particular way that changes the context and the initial idea that you had, the author can go to court and sue that person because this is prejudicial to the author's honor or reputation. Right to prevent destruction of the artwork of a recognized stature. This is more of a common law concept. So basically, common law, it's the US and the UK. And recognized stature, basically, it's when the artwork is very well known and it's recognized worldwide. And we're going to look at a very interesting case as well of how graffitis, even though they were destroyed, then the compensation was paid because the graffitis were recognized as the artworks of a recognized stature and they couldn't have been destroyed. And then whether it's allowed to alter or destroy the artwork depends on the nature of the case. We're going to see it later as well. And some more theory. Graffiti, by itself, they are illegal in their nature because in most of the jurisdictions, if not all, they are regarded as the act of vandalism because you're painting something over somebody else's wall or somebody else's construction, building, without the permission of the owner of that building normally. The other case, of course, is going to be when the graffiti was done with the permission of the owner, and then it's going to be a completely different case. But for now, we're going to look only at the graffitis that were done without the permission of the owner. Okay, Anya Kudrinova is asking, is there a legal difference between murals and graffiti? Because I feel like at least in Ukraine, state often supports their creation. The legal difference, I don't see that there is actually going to be a legal difference between murals and the graffiti, because for the purposes of intellectual property protection, the only thing that matters is that you put your creative idea into some kind of a physical form that can be revisited, viewed once again, can be passed in one way or another, etc. So for the legal, from the legal perspective and from the legal standpoint, there is no difference between murals and the graffiti. There is no, let's say, if the mural is the one that is more aesthetic or ordered by the state, it does not have more protection than graffiti. Unless, of course, the graffiti was done in an illegal way, let's say, without the permission. So yeah, you can say that murals have more protection because they are going to be done in most of the cases with the permission of the owner or with the permission of the administration. But I would say that there is no such a big difference for the intellectual property purposes. Okay, so we stopped at saying that graffiti is illegal in the nature. And from here we have two viewpoints. First viewpoint, regarded by some scholars, is that since graffiti is illegal in its nature and it was done with the abuse of rights, so basically somebody came to somebody else's wall and they said, okay, let me paint something here. In my act of painting over your wall, I am disregarding your right of property over that wall. So I am abusing my rights. And since I'm abusing my rights, I shall not be offered any kind of protection, even intellectual property protection, copyright. This is one viewpoint. The second viewpoint that is regarded more frequently and is actually more popular even in courts is that even though graffiti is illegal in its nature, still some protection of artists' rights, to some extent, is still necessary. Basically, the scholars say that the graffiti creators already face administrative or criminal charges when they paint over the walls for the act of vandalism or hooliganism. Why should they also be deprived of their rights to be protected by the intellectual property laws? Because it's going to be some kind of double jeopardy. There is a principle in law, non bis in idem, you cannot be punished twice for the same act. So that would actually be the punishment twice for the same act. So, but from here there is actually an important principle. The protection is granted only to some extent. And this means that physical object still remains with the owner of the building. So, since the graffiti was painted on the wall, it is now part of the wall, and the person who owns the wall is the owner of the building. So physically, the graffiti belongs to the owner of the building now. But copyright remains with the artist. This is a very important part. Second, artists can protect the integrity of their work. So basically, if somebody comes to the wall and it's a very well-known graffiti and somebody vandalizes it, the artist can still protect their work by bringing a lawsuit in the court, etc. We're going to see an interesting case about this in connection to Banksy as well. And finally, the protection against third parties. If somebody wants to reproduce the work and use it in some kind of commercial purposes, then the artist, even though he has done his work of art, graffiti, on somebody else's wall illegally, in an illegal way, he still can prevent third parties from reproducing the work, using it in commercial purposes, etc. And the rationale behind this is that the graffiti, that the artist hasn't done anything to the third party. He has done damage to the wall of the owner. But to the third party, someone else on the street who takes a picture of the graffiti and then starts selling it, he has not done anything basically. It's actually the third person who is causing damage to the economic rights of the artist now by illegally reproducing it and using it in a commercial way. So now let's move from the theory finally and let's look at the cases. Banksy and copyright. Banksy is very well known for his statement that copyright is for losers. But actually, in 2018, when there was an exhibition in Milan, in the Mudec Museum, that was called A Visual Protest, The Art of Banksy. He decided to bring a lawsuit against that exhibition, because exhibition was lawfully using Banksy's images and Banksy's graffitis for the purposes of promotion, etc. But they were also selling a merchandise. Normally, there is like a merchandise sale at the end of the exhibition, and they were selling merchandise with Banksy's artworks. There was a company, there still is, a company called Pest Control, and it was established by Banksy himself. And this company is responsible for the handling, they're handling the service that authenticates Banksy's artworks, basically. So the company, Pest Control, later brought the lawsuit. Well, it wasn't Banksy, because if Banksy had to bring the lawsuit, he had to disclose his identity, and his identity is a huge secret. So the company that was established by him brought a lawsuit against the museum and said that actually you cannot sell the merchandise without Banksy's permission or without some kind of a licensing agreement, etc. And the Italian court of Milan actually agreed and said, no, you cannot do that. Basically, you cannot sell merchandise without the artist's permission. Which is quite ironic, honestly, because as I said, Banksy is very well known for his expression, copyright is for losers. But in the end, Banksy is actually the one who came to use the copyright in order to protect his economic rights. And this is a really good example of how, even though most of the Banksy's, well, all of the Banksy's artworks are illegal in nature, they are the acts of vandalism, let's say, he still managed to protect his copyright. So you see some protection, even though the graffiti in itself is illegal, some protection is still granted to the graffiti creators. They can still protect their copyright in courts, etc. Next case. It's vandalizing Banksy's graffiti. So basically, this is the graffiti piece that Banksy made for the Valentine's Day. On the left, you can see the graffiti as it was before it was vandalized, and on the right, you can see how the graffiti looks after it's been vandalized. Basically, there was something painted over the graffiti with the pink paint. And there was an interesting dispute in the legal community. Actually, Banksy's art is vandalism, but can something that in itself is vandalism be vandalized? Because Banksy's artwork was vandalized. It was not, let's say, destroyed, but it was painted in a particular way that doesn't make the artwork look as aesthetic as it was before. So basically here the most important thing to talk about is who actually owns the artwork. And as I said before, this is when we see that the physical object, the wall, since graffiti is becoming part of that wall, is owned by the owner of that house, but the copyright is still owned by Banksy. And if you remember, copyright comprises not only economical rights but also moral rights, and moral rights also include you being able to prevent somebody from destroying your work or prejudicing it in some way that goes against your honor, etc. So there is no lawsuit, as far as I know, in connection to that artwork. But if Banksy wanted to protect his artwork and he knew who vandalized this work of art, he could bring still a lawsuit in the court, theoretically, because he could still protect his moral rights. Let's go next. Oh, this is a very interesting case. 5 points. 5 points is a building. Well, it's not a building. It's it's known as a building named 5 Points that is located in Queens, in New York, and there were 45 murals done by, well, murals, graffiti, done by different artists through a very long period of time. The person who ordered the creation of these graffitis was Gerard Volkov. And Gerard Volkov, he ordered the creation of these graffitis. The building became really famous. People would be coming there in order to take pictures of it. Many celebrities would actually visit the building. And Gerard understood how successful was this project, and at some point he said why not selling it? And he was planning to build 2 condominiums, so some kind of a normal Russian or Ukrainian buildings where many people live, at exactly that place. And people would want to build houses there, to build those houses, condominiums there, and to live there as crazy, because it was such a well-known place. So basically, he decided to sell this building, and right before the sales, he painted over the murals, and you can see the result on the right. Basically, all the murals have been destroyed, painted over, and now it does not look aesthetic whatsoever. It was quite a long case. I think it started in 2013, and it ended in 2018-19. And it finished with the decision of the US Appeals Court that upheld the Brooklyn Supreme Court's decision. Brooklyn Supreme Court decided that this was a work of a recognized stature. And if you remember, here I talked about it. One of the moral rights is to prevent the destruction of the artwork of a recognized stature. So, according to the US law, even though if the artwork maybe is illegal, well, in this case it was legal because it was done with the permission of the owner of the building. But even theoretically, even if it was illegal and it was a work of art of a recognized stature, so it was a very well-known worldwide artwork, many people would be coming there, it becomes part of the cultural landscape, then the artist could also prevent the destruction of the graffiti. And this was actually the case. Unfortunately, artists were not able to prevent the destruction of the pieces. They filed an interim relief request in order for the court to order the owner of the building to not destroy it, but they filed it quite late, or the owner was quite fast in painting them, so they were destroyed in the end. In the end, the dispute was about the damages that had to be paid to the artist in order to compensate the loss of these artworks, of these graffitis. Again, the moral rights comprise the right of disallowing the modification in a harmful way to the artist's reputation, or in a harmful way to the artwork itself, if it's an artwork of a recognized stature. The Brooklyn Supreme Court decided that it was indeed the artwork of a recognized stature, and they said that actually damages have to be paid, and for the 45 graffitis, the damages that were ordered was $150,000 per each graffiti. So in the end, it amounted to $6.75 million in damages that had to be paid to the artists that painted the 5 Points building. So yeah, this is a really good example of how law actually provides protection to the graffiti, to something that normally is viewed as vandalism. Now actually law was acting as the protector of this kind of art. Next, my favorite artist, Marina Bramovic. She is a very well-known performance artist. She is even called the grandmother of the performance art. And one of her most well-known works performances is called Rhythm Zero, and it was performed in Naples. During that performance, Marina placed 72 objects, and they were really different objects, from some kind of really not harmful ones, even like the ones that could give pleasure, such as feathers, some kind of food, as you can see on the table, I don't know, a brush, and stuff like this, to the objects that were actually really harmful and could even kill potentially Marina. So, for example, the spikes of the rose that could make her bleed. There was also a gun with a bullet in it, and somebody could literally come and kill Marina. So what was happening is that Marina placed all of those objects, 72 objects, on the table, and she opened the space for the public for 6 hours. And what is very important for our discussion today is that she wrote some kind of a disclaimer at first. She said, "I take full responsibility for what is going to happen in the next 6 hours. You can do whatever you want. You can do literally whatever you want with the objects that you have on the table, and you can do whatever you want with my body that is also becoming an object for those 6 hours." So in this, Marina tried to actually expand her creativity, because, as she later said, she wanted to make sure that nothing disturbed the creative process and nothing disturbed the process of the performance, that people would actually react in a way that they want to, and nothing would restrain them. And actually, people started acting in the way that they wanted. At first, they were very nice. They would feed her some food. They would like play with her with some like feathers and everything. They would give her roses. They would put a mirror next to her face, like trying to make her look at herself. But as time was passing, human nature was basically taking over, and people started becoming more and more violent, up until the point when one man picked up a gun from the table and he put it next to the Marina's head. Marina basically confessed that she knew that she could die, and because by the idea of the performance, she couldn't even do anything. She was an object. Her body was an object for those 6 hours as well. And if somebody didn't stop that man, Marina probably would have been killed, because that man looked very serious, that he wanted to press the he wanted to basically shoot. So what is happening here? Marina wrote a disclaimer: "I am the one who takes full responsibility for what is going to happen now." Is it possible from the legal standpoint to take the responsibility for what is being done to you and your body, and, for example, if somebody kills you? Well, many jurisdictions have different viewpoints on it. Again, in Sweden, I think you can consent to harm and to bodily damage. It's also really debatable about BDSM practices and everything, when people consent to some harm being inflicted on their bodies. For example, in the UK, you cannot inflict grave bodily harm, and you cannot kill the person if the person consents. Consent in that case is not going to be a valid defense. But in some jurisdictions, it's actually a valid defense. And if the artist says, "Okay, I'm taking full responsibility, do whatever you want," in some jurisdictions, the people who may have killed Marina or inflicted harm, like grave bodily harm, would have been acquitted if some kind of a lawsuit would have been brought. So this is an interesting example of how a law actually prevents the artists in some jurisdictions, as you can see, because in some jurisdictions it's still, this consent is not going to be a valid defense. The law prevents the artist from fully expanding their creativity, because for Marina's performance, in order to work properly, she needed the full freedom of the people. They could do whatever they want, but actually they couldn't, because if she was killed, then those people might have faced a legal suit. Because even though creativity is a really nice process and art is also very nice, law is also thinking about protecting people and protecting their lives, their health, and in this case, the protection of, let's say, Marina in this case, and her health is much more important than just allowing everybody to do whatever they want with her. So yes, let's go into the next example. El Salvador art. This is a performance that was done by Victor Crack Rodriguez in El Salvador in 2016. So what he did was he took three really important books for the country of El Salvador. He took the Saint Bible, he took Salvadorian Constitution, and he took the Peace Accords of El Salvador. And what he did is he put them on the road, and he started basically sprinkling it with the water machine that is usually used in order to clean the streets, as you can see. And he was basically on the highway sprinkling that water and bringing it forward with the water, all the three books. Why I brought this example is because in some jurisdictions this can also be regarded as some kind of an illegal act as well. Because, for example, in Russia, if you are destroying some state symbolics, such as the flag, the coat of arms, and sometimes even constitution, I'm more than sure that if you go to the Red Square and you like burn the constitution or you tear it apart, police is going to come and pick you up at some point, and then you're going to face some kind of legal charges as well. So in this kind of act, he could have faced also some kind of legal charges in some jurisdictions, because he was performing some kind of a political act, political performance on the book that is associated with the state symbolics. In that case, it was the Salvadorian Constitution. I see that we have not that much time remaining, so I'm trying to speed up a little bit. If you have any questions still, please write them in the group chat. Next performance that I want to talk about is the one that was done by Pussy Riot, and probably you all are very familiar with that band. So basically Pussy Riot is the band that in 2012 performed a performance that was called Mother of God, Drive Putin Away, in the Cathedral of Christ the Savior. And for that they were facing charges for hooliganism, and actually they were sentenced to imprisonment for 2 years. Well, that is a very interesting case because of the aftermath of what happened after the trial took place in Russia. Because the band, Pussy Riot, and the lawyers of that band decided to bring the case on the supranational level. They actually went to the European Court of Human Rights, and they wanted to they filed a suit against Russia for the wrongful pretrial treatment of the band, for the treatment in court, and also for the violation of the freedom of expression of the music band. And actually, European Court of Human Rights in 2018 decision ruled in favor of Pussy Riot, and he ordered, the court, it ordered damages to be repaid by Russia to Pussy Riot members. Basically, Russia had to repay 37,000 euros. To some members it was like 11,000, to some members it was 6,000, but in total the sum was 37,000 euros had to be repaid to the Pussy Riot members. Why I brought this case is that, as we can see, the act, the performance, the political performance that Pussy Riot made in 2012 was actually illegal. It went against the criminal laws of Russia. It was regarded as an act of hooliganism, and the members of the band actually faced the legal charges afterwards. But this is a very interesting case because you can see how law offers protection of artists' freedoms not only from the very beginning, but also from the as an aftermath. Because at first they were regarded as criminals, but later on, when the case was brought to the European Court of Human Rights, the court actually decided, yes, the pretrial treatment and treatment in court of the music band members was wrong, and also that there was a violation of their freedom of expression. So Russia had to repay the damages. So I'm not saying that the performance and the act by itself was validated later on, because this is a very, let's say, broad statement, but still some protection, even post factum, after even the aftermath of the case, when there was a decision and they were sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, law still offered to them some kind of a protection of their freedom of expression and of their art, let's say. And finally, what I want to discuss, no, not finally actually, one more. Piotr Pawlenski. You might have heard about him as well. He's an activist, and he is a member of the so-called Aktionskunst movement that was born in Vienna in the 20th century. And the idea of the Aktionskunst is that the artist some kind of erases the boundaries between the art and the reality, and he tries to incorporate the art into the reality that we're facing every day, which is actually what Piotr Pawlenski did in 2015. Yes, in the night of November 9th, 2015, he came to the building of the FSB, the Federal Bureau of Security in Russia, at Lubyanka, and he came with the canister of gasoline. He basically poured the gasoline on the door, and then he lit it up. And he took a picture of him standing with the canister in front of the burning door of the Federal Bureau of Security building. He took a picture and named the action that was happening and the artwork, because it is an artwork, the burning door of Lubyanka. And he was faced with charges of first hooliganism and also later on vandalism. And then later on he fled to France, and in France he kind of tried to do the same. But for us, what is the most important here now is the act that he did there in front of the building at Lubyanka in 2015. Because what he did was, of course, illegal. He lit up the door of the building, and he committed the act of hooliganism and vandalism. But actually, he performed this very controversial political action, and it later on became an artwork. And many people actually say this is not a vandalism, this is a statement, this is the work of art, because he's trying to draw some kind of attention to the problems that are happening in Russia right now, by such controversial means, of course, but he's still drawing attention. Art limits his freedom to do that, but actually at the moment he is not limited. I said art limits the freedom. Law limits the freedom for him to do such an act, but it doesn't limit it at the moment, because he was still able to perform such an act. It limits it only in the form of a punishment that he later on faced, and he was later on faced with a fine, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's a fine. He was faced with a fine, and that was the punishment for the act that he did, but still he was able to perform his work of art. He made a statement, and it's actually regarded by many people as a very powerful political performance act, or the act of actionism. And the final case study that I want to look at is actually the Ukrainian political art. This was an action, a political performance that was done in 2005 by by a group of activists, and it was called "We Will Rap You." Okay, Annie is asking another question. It was Pavlensky who also, yes, he also nailed his genitals to the Red Square. Yes, it was also one of his performances. He also wrapped himself around with the wired, how's it called? The thing that they're putting in prisons, so the prisoners cannot escape. Barbed wire or something like this, yeah. And one of his performances was also that he nailed his genitals to the Red Square. It's true. Yeah, in Ukraine, political art also exists, and in 2005 there was a performance called "We Will Rap You" that was performed in Ukraine. It's maybe not as active as in other countries, but in Ukraine, political art also exists. And even though you can say that the political art sometimes can be controversial and it goes against law, it still has its place, and it's a very actually important, some kind of like an impetus for the development of the art, for the development of political thoughts, for drawing attention to some political problems, as you have seen with the previous performances, as the ones with the Piotr Pawlensky, that basically was drawing attention to the acts that were committed by the Federal Bureau of Security. Pussy Riot, that was also drawing attention to what is happening at the very highest levels of power in Russia. In El Salvador, the artist was also exploring how the three most important books, the three foundational books, like the borders would be expanded. The borders of creativity would be expanded if he performed this kind of action, and how people would actually react to such an act. Yes. So basically, here are the sources that you can see, where the pictures were taken from, and also some useful information. If you want, I can send it later on, and then it can be spread somehow, or the link can be posted together with the recording. So yeah, basically that's it for today. Today we saw how art and law interacts with each other, how law offers protection to the artworks and to the artists that perform those artworks in the form of a copyright, even though sometimes those artworks are illegal, as we saw it in the case of Graffitis, with Banksy, with 5 Points. How law also offers protection to the artist, but at the same time in a way limits their creativity, because the creativity of Marina Bramovic was formally limited by the criminal law. The people could not inflict damage on her body. They would later on face some kind of criminal charges after that. And also how law and art interact in the political context, which is also a very important topic to talk about. And how law, in the case of Pussy Riot, as I said, offers post factum protection of the artist's freedom of expression. And we saw how a law formally limits the creativity of artists, but only again post factum in the way of the punishment. An artist is still he can still perform his idea and put his creativity into real life, but later on he will be faced with some kind of charges, fines, imprisonment, etc. So yeah, that's it for today, and I hope that it was useful for you and that you liked the information. If you have any more questions, you can message me, or you can ask for the contacts, and I will be able to answer more questions. If you have more questions now, you can write them in the chat. If not, I guess that will be it. Oh, what? Okay, Igor is asking, so can we legalize administrative crimes, or if it was an art performance in some cases? You cannot really legalize okay, there is administrative punishment and the criminal punishment, and they are two different things. And in neither of those cases, nor in the not in the administrative punishments nor in the criminal punishments, we can't really legalize the the art performance in some cases, because again it's still illegal. You are able to perform and to put your creativity into real life, but you still need to understand that you're undertaking some kind of a risk, that you're later on going to be faced with criminal or administrative charges. And this is actually something that artists should understand, and they do understand that. I actually attended a conference with the Salvadorian artists like 2 or 3 months before all that coronavirus started, and I asked them what are the boundaries of creativity. To what extent can an artist violate some kind of laws in order to bring some kind of a statement, in order to bring some kind of idea into real life and deliver it to the people. And what artists basically said is that yes, the artist sometimes, or even most of the times in the modern context, needs to be brave and needs to put bold ideas, but still law is something that limits the creativity in a way. And again, it limits it only post factum in terms of punishment. If you still want to perform your artwork, you can do it, but later on you will be punished for that. You should also understand that. And this is something that artists has to understand in order to perform his art and to make it effective. So yeah. Any other questions? Probably not. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed it, and yeah, see you at some point. Bye bye.